Hi there, Neil here, the Twisted Light Worker. In this video I'm going to bring to light a problem that's happening in a lot of places, almost coast to coast in Canada, and I know the problem's happening in other countries and other locations as well. Greedy landlords are kicking their tenants out, and tenants are finding themselves on the street, living in their cars, even showering in their cars. This lady, she's got a makeshift shower with a little pool in the back of her Honda. There's a whole bunch of people in that situation. It's not something that's unheard of. It's happening everywhere. It could even happen to you. And you know what? As you can see, it happened to me too. I got the sheriff order to move out. My story, I've been in the apartment for 10 years. It was a duplex, half a duplex. I was renting one side, and there was a two-story on my side and a bungalow on the other side. I've been there 10 years, and a new owner bought it 5 years ago. And at that time, knowing that the house was for sale, I was ready to move in those 5 years because it was for sale for the whole 5 years. But the new owner assured me that I could stay as long as I wanted because she had no intentions of doing anything other than keeping it as a rental unit. So at that, I was encouraged. I totally made it my home. I did some drywalling repairs, a fancy paint job with a burgundy wall going up the stairs. You'll see it in my previous videos before this date. I did landscaping on the outside, and out of the 10 years, not just the 5 years, in the 10 years that I lived there, I was the only tenant that did the lawns on both sides and shoveled the snow on both sides all winter. So I was a maintenance man. I really cared for the property and did a lot of improvements. On top of that, there was a big old maple tree out the front yard, and one day I realized that it was hollow. It gave away and showed that it was hollow, so I called the arborist, and they immediately had it knocked down. And now that big old tree could have fallen on the house and crushed it, no question. It was right there. It was a big enough tree to totally damage and take out the house. Or it could have fallen on the power lines. And after the arborist looked at it, the arborist had an order put in and the power company took it down. So I saved the house. There was a family of 6 skunks living underneath, and I got rid of them. It took me 3 days. 3 days. Caught 2 at a time, 3 times. But I got them all out, moved them out. So saved both myself and the tenant beside me a lot of grief. And in the 5 years my landlady had owned it, 3 different people had rented the other side. So I was proving myself to be a good tenant, stable, and I cared for the property. She even went to Colombia for 2 years, and I basically looked after it. She had a realtor come from Hamilton to manage it, but he really didn't do anything the whole time that they were in Colombia. They came back from Colombia, and they give me a talk saying that they come through saying that they came back from Colombia, and then they called me and said that they wanted to take some pictures on the inside. So her and her boyfriend came through, and afterwards I had no idea what their intent was. They stood there with their masks on, good obedient puppets, and they asked me if I would be willing to sign an agreement that I'd move out in 2 months. And I said, fuck you. What kind of approach is that? Somebody who's done all that work, and that's the way they approached it? They wanted to boot me out? And they said, fine, we'll have to go through the courts. And I said, you do what you have to do, and I'll do what I have to do. And at that point, I started to understand a little bit about common law. Had a friend that had worked with common law tactics successfully. So he gave me a hand. So, with court coming up, landlord and tenant Zoom meeting, I put this notice to him. To the man or woman known as, and I put the landlord's name, I am the man commonly known as Twisted Lightworker. I wish to make known to the said above that I would like to continue to remain in the property and located at, and resolve in good faith a mutual beneficial relationship involving the said property. I am interested in negotiating a reasonable increase in dollars with continued care of the said property to remain in good standing. I wish to have more time to come up with a mutual agreement concerning the said property outside of the landlord and tenant board. What I intend to do to remain in good standing on the said property: number 1, continue to make good on all debts. Number 2, to negotiate a reasonable increase in dollars and care for the property to remain on the said property. To communicate difficulties in a timely and reasonable way. This is a lawful notice to be used on my claim versus the said above for any wrongdoing in this manner. I am the man known as. And this is a document that I used, and it may or may not work with you. I'm not giving you legal advice. I'm just sharing with you my story. My story. I won the case in that particular Zoom meeting. Zoom, landlord and tenant meeting, had to be in Zoom because of the pandemic. But I knew that she was going to make another approach, and she would eventually win. And like I said, I'm an entrepreneur, and I believe that owners have a right to their property, but they also have to consider the rights of the tenants. They definitely have to consider the rights of the tenants. And in this case, because I was a good tenant and cared for the property, cared for her investment, I was determined to make a stand. And so I had sent her an increase in rent. Next thing I know, I get the order that we're going back to another landlord and tenant Zoom meeting. So what I did was I sent her another notice, and this time she had a lawyer helping her. And so once again, to the woman known as, the landlord's name, to the man known as, the landlord's legal counsel name. To any man or woman acting as public servants of the Crown Corporation, such as the tenant board. Now you got to remember that all civil law is done under Crown corporations. It's got nothing to do with men versus women, nothing to do with human rights. It's all to do with corporate law. So I gave the notice. I am the man commonly known as Twisted Lightworker. I wish to make known to the said above that I wish to continue to remain on the property at 1 Perfect Street until I am secure in finding a place to live. I intend to move out as soon as I can and at a time and place that I do not take on any harm or loss. I would still like more time to come up with a mutual agreement concerning said above property outside of the landlord and tenant board. See, I was trying to keep it between a man and a woman because the civil courts have no standing in the matter if we can both deal with it man to man or face to face. Anyway, I claim I do not consent to any costs from any of the said above concerning the landlord tenant board or related. I do not believe this matter cannot be worked out privately. I believe the said above are reasonable for any costs due to public involvement. I also claim the said above are accountable for any loss or harm I receive due to the said above actions. I believe the lockdowns and actions from the corporate governments have made my situation more difficult and should be taken into consideration in this matter. You see, what I'm doing here is I'm trying to buy more time. This particular court was in end of September, I believe it was, towards the end of September. And once again, this is not legal advice. I'm just giving it as demonstration of what I did. Continuing on, Page 2 of the notice. I will attend the tribunal court hearing to protect my rights in this matter, which I reserve at all times. Attending the tribunal does not mean I consent to the rules and decisions. It is a lawful notice to be used in my claim versus as said above for any wrongdoing in this matter. So that particular Zoom court meeting was done in September, and they wanted me out at the end of November. They were going to give me 2 months, October, November, boom, out. I negotiated to stay until the 30th of January. Now I could have negotiated to stay even longer, and I could have also said that I rely on the landlord's assistant in finding another place for me to move to. So I could have actually done 2 steps that I didn't do, because like I said, I'm an entrepreneur and I believe in that system, that we have a right to properties that we buy and own. But once again, landlords have a duty and a responsibility to look after the people who are looking after their investment. Not only was I paying my rent, but I did a lot of other things. So in my case, I pushed that and got an extended few months. So I moved it from the end of November to the end of January. I bought an extra couple months, December, January. Actually, I think the court was earlier. I ended up buying 4 months' time anyways, and they wanted to have me out in 2 months. So my dates are wrong. But the bottom line is I extended my stay there. At the end of January, I still had not found a place, and I literally tried hard. I had my name in on 3 different places and didn't get it. The rental situation globally, especially in our area, is absolutely asinine. I know landlords who put an ad in Facebook looking for someone to rent. I called, and they had taken it down 4 hours after they put the ad up, and I called after that. And they already had 100 calls, and they already had it rented. So it's no fault of any tenant that they end up out on the street or in their car. But you can use common law to extend your stay. And the next step is remain in your power no matter what happens. Remain in your power no matter what happens. So only as a warrior can one withstand the path of knowledge. A warrior cannot complain or regret anything. His life is an endless challenge, and challenges cannot possibly be good or bad. Challenges are simply challenges. And that's the attitude that you have to take if you find yourself in this situation that, like I was in. So challenges can't be good or bad. So standing in your power when you find yourself in a difficult situation, like I did, yeah, that's the next thing that you really want to put an emphasis on. Put on the armor of God and stand in your power. So what I did, I set up camp at a boat launch. A boat launch on Black Creek. And as you see the fire place there with a couple logs to sit down, you can see where the boat launch is in the creek. Gorgeous spot. I set up my truck. All my stuff was now in storage. I set up my truck to live in. I slept on the bench seat of my truck. Really uncomfortable, but I was there for like 25, 26 days. I got up and had a camp stove breakfast, camp stove supper every day. A couple times I did a wiener roast. And had my French press coffee in the morning with oatmeal. And you know what? I ate healthy. I ate healthy. That bowl on the right there, that is homemade soup from my homemade garden that I shared a video with before, and I'll put the link to that. I made a flower bed produce 48 jars of food as well as beauty. And I show people how that they can do that as well. And every night I had a fire. Every night I had a fire. I had guests, absolutely amazing guests. A flock of Canada geese showed up. Absolutely amazing. And then this blue heron. I got up one morning and it was magnificent. Standing there with his wings out like that, sunning itself. It stood there and allowed me to photograph it for about 10 minutes. Astounding, majestic. And there were a lot of good people coming down to drop their boats, canoes, and paddle boards into the water and go for a paddle up the creek with a canoe or a paddle board, or go fishing in their fishing boats. Janine and Alex came down. Beautiful woman with her son. He likes, and got to know them quite well. He likes to do work with old watches. And he noticed that I had an old Omega self-winding watch right away. And how cool is that? Passionate young man. I met another couple guys that frequently come down. Andrew and John, they launched their boat and did some fishing, and they were really good to me. Awesome, awesome. But there's a lot of other people that I met too. I even had a visit from the police. Now this really upset me in actuality, because what is this costing the taxpayer? A couple grand an hour for two police to go up and down a quiet creek. For crying out loud, ridiculous, waste of money. But I met this fellow that had a really cool canoe, or kayak. An inflatable kayak, and he put a bed underneath his feet that was stable enough to set a lawn chair up on. He built some stabilizer bars on a kayak, and he could stand up and fish and cast with stability with this little rascal. Another fellow that I really enjoyed his visits, he come down, Fraser. He would bring his 10-foot speedboat. It's a river race boat. It's an older boat, but he had it looked after and cared for with a nice big motor on the back, and he could go 35 miles an hour with his 10-foot boat. Amazing. Fraser was a great guy. I really look forward to his visits. And then I had some really fun people. These guys, they decided that they got up one weekend to build the deck in the sun, and it was too hot, so they decided to build a boat. And they put this boat together with 3 barrels. With the 3 barrels, it was really funny because they jumped onto it and almost did a wheelie and knocked the 2 guys into the water. And they scrambled to try to level it out, and they realized there was a design flaw. And with 3 barrels, it wasn't working too good, so they had to do something else. And they came back with...
Hey, he's taking a picture or a video. Yeah!
So they came back with this.
This is fucking awesome.
4 barrels with a 5-horse electric motor. They toured up downstream around the bend past the mansions that just prior to going into the lake. But 5-horse motor, electric motor burned out, and they had to rip the floorboards up to paddle back. I didn't get a video of the next time they came back, but they came back with the 4-barrel picnic table with a 2-horse Johnson motor on it. So they were continually improving it. I share all that because the whole point is to learn to stand in your power. Standing in your power when you go through a challenging time. Make the most out of it. Make the most out of you. Make the most out of this time of awakening. Realize that there's challenges people are being faced with that are outside of the media and kind of hidden. There's still a lot of people who are good men and women who are finding themselves homeless and living in cars. Reach out. show your support in the way you can help them. Help them stand in their power, or help them find a place to rent, or put them up for a few days while they get their feet back underneath them again. We need to stick together, because together, united, we can change this world to be the most magnificent that it has ever been. And in fact, that is what we are doing. So learn some common law to protect your own rights. Stand in your power. And like, share, and join my channel. And if you really appreciate the information that I share, buy me a coffee. The link's in the description. And you'll always find links in the description of all my videos. So hope to see you soon on the next video. Stay tuned.